Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamira, coming to you with a mic because I have gotten some comments that sometimes the audio in my videos is low or just not very good, and I do film on a phone. So I'm hoping that maybe this can work. This is an old mic that I use from time to time. So hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamira. I am who am I? I am a 29-year-old who works in tech and lives in Brooklyn, New York, and I make lifestyle videos about living in New York, just in living my best life. So I wanted to make a video today because it's been about, if you aren't aware, I am originally from New York. I moved from Philly, where I lived for 4 years, back to New York in February. So I had like a whole homecoming series. If you want to check that out, I can link it here. But it has been a few months, I think definitely over the halfway mark, since I've been back in New York City, since living in Brooklyn for the last time, probably 10 years ago. So I just wanted to come and sort of talk about things that I've sort of realized now that I'm back in the city, and also wanted to provide some tips for people who are interested in moving to New York or moving back to New York. And because I know that there's a lot of people coming back to New York and the rent prices are wild, and I see them, and I personally wouldn't do it, but I know that some people have different circumstances. So I wanted to provide some tips on being back and moving to the city. One of the first things moving from Philadelphia to New York City that really just sort of gripped me was how large the city is. It is so freaking immersed, and as someone who likes to go on little adventures and excursions and things like that, I had to come to terms with the fact that this city is very big, and I needed to adjust my expectations for how much I'd be able to do in a weekend. That's just one of the first sort of takeaways. It's just this city is huge, and trying to tackle it in the way that I was doing in Philly is just not reasonable. So I just need to take my time and get used to getting back into the flow of things and being in this new city, being back in the city, and make it work for me. There's no rush. I feel like to some extent I was rushing to do the things that I had missed out on, in the time that I wasn't living here. And really, there is no rush. These places, some places are closing and stuff, but the essence of the city will always be here. Hopefully. I don't know. One of the bigger things that I was missing that I didn't realize how much I needed was the kinship. There is so much community here that is more congested compared to smaller cities like Philly, where people specifically Black people are spread out, and it's harder to sort of find folks that look like you, that are sort of in a similar space in life and ambition and all that stuff in places in Philly. That was my experience. But in here, I think I went to this event at Dumbo House, and it was this beauty event with Black women, and I remember stepping in and being just completely floored by all these fabulous, educated women who looked like me, who were excited to talk about something like beauty and the impact of just sort of loving your hair, and what does that look like to be natural in a corporate setting, and all of these different topics that spoke to my identity and was in just the most beautiful setting. If you've ever been to Dumbo House, if you've never been to Dumbo House, if there's an invite or you can secure from a member, I I recommend you check it out. It is stunning. So in that moment, I realized, I'm like, I felt in that same breath, I felt really safe and really in awe, but almost to the point where I was like comparing myself, and I was like a bit intimidated by that experience, just because I hadn't had something like that sort of kinship and community, like in that, at that level, for a minute. So that's something that I realized, just it sort of reinforced how beautiful that was. So moving back to New York, I had a lot of high hopes for moving back to Brooklyn and being back in New York City. But I think, and I mentioned this like earlier in some of my moving vlogs, just like I'm at a different space in my life. And that has definitely become more clear, because while I do think that people can live and raise a family and all of that stuff in New York, like that's not something that, like, New York isn't just like a transitory city. I don't know if that's the right word, but you can create community, build families, and have a home here. But I don't think that is something that I want to do. This city has changed so much, on top of it being so freaking expensive and just like not really worth the cost. I don't feel like the community that was here when I was growing up, well, I know for a fact the community that I had growing up is no longer here. Like, I went to, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't go back to Bed-Stuy, which is a neighborhood that I grew up in. It's a completely different vibe, and I feel like going back to that neighborhood would just cause a lot of like resentment and anger, and just sort of like it would make me feel even more disconnected to New York City. So I think that's I think there's a growing list of cons now that I am back here, and I really would, I don't know. I think I'm sort of split. I think there are more cons than pros for being back in New York City. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think that there's amazing culture and museums and all that stuff to see and do. But at the same time, there are a lot of cons that are just as important as the pros. And yeah, I feel like for me, being here, I think this is one of the other things, like being in the city is hard. I feel like it's hard on your body, it's hard on your spirit, it's hard on your mind. You've seen things, you've seen a lot of things, you're dodging a lot of things. And I don't know that I'd want to be in a mindset of hardness and grittiness the rest of my life. Like, I'm ready for ease, I'm ready for comfort. So that's just sort of my feelings on whether New York City is still for me. More like positive and personal level, I love my neighborhood. I'm obsessed with my neighborhood. I love how diverse it is. I love the area that it's in. It's like by so many great things, and I'm really proud of sort of the space that I've come to. I'm thankful, that things have sort of worked out for me in that sort of sense of like coming back and actually finding a space and it being like a safe neighborhood and a diverse neighborhood and in a great location for things that matter to me. So I realized I had this perception that when moving back to New York, that it would be a little bit more easier to make friends as opposed to like being in Philly, where I didn't start making connections with people until the end of me living there. And I was wrong. It is just as hard to make friends here than it is in Philadelphia. And I think, I was doing like the Bumble BFF and trying to make friends like while in the house. And I think that's where I sort of messed up, because I was spending a lot of time in the house being very comfortable, might I add, watching my TV in my cozy space. And it was completely counterproductive to like what I wanted, which is to like meet people and to try new things, to be out. Like I'm not spending all this money to be in the city and just be home. So one thing that I felt like could help me make friends is sort of just look into the hobbies that I enjoyed and try to do things connected to those interests, and then maybe make friends while you're out doing that activity. So for example, I knew that I really wanted to I really enjoy dancing, and I'm like, maybe there's some ways that I can get back into dance classes. So I looked into dance classes and ended up getting one, and I didn't actually make friends. I didn't actually make friends, but I did do a thing that I really loved and had a great time doing. And then I also was just like around people and was socializing with more people. And which is not something that I get like on my day to day. So like my working situation is a little bit different. My team is mostly remote. So when I go into the office, I'm not necessarily working with colleagues. I'm working with people who are in different teams who happen to come in that day. But I don't really have like a day-to-day connection with particular individuals in person, like people on my team in person. So that is like a little bit different. But thankfully, I also have been going into the office more. When I say more, I just mean like 2 times a week. And I am, becoming friendly with the people who like sit by me, who just are like in the office. Because I think, and maybe we'll start to see that as people become hybrid, is like people are more likely to make friends with people who work in different departments rather than just being closely tied to their colleagues who are just on their team. That's just my take. So I'm going to continue to pursue hobbies related to my interests and try to make friends there. But yeah, I'm realizing that it's harder to make friends. And that sort of helped inform which neighborhood I was open to moving to.
She said she the one, I bet she thinks she is. Saying don't have no trust, I don't know where you been. I need a break.